What's going on, everybody? This is Captain. Welcome back to another video. Yes, I'm actually filming in my dorm room right now. As you guys can see, this is actually my side of the room. I'm the one with all the movie posters and whatnot. Yeah, there we go. Probably can't see that well. It's not very good. Yeah, I'm filming with my camera right now. I'm actually thinking about getting a new one because, let's be honest, this one is by no means top tier. This is not like the best camera that there is out there. It's just a little video recorder. I don't know when I'm going to be getting a new one or anytime soon, but I've been thinking about it because I mean this was a gift, so it's hard for me to just stop using it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm already going off topic. Anyway, what I wanted to do today was I figured why not tier rank the best presidents as well as the worst presidents. Now, be forewarned that I myself am no historian. I don't know every fact about every single president, so it's not going to be completely factual. This is just an opinion, and there are some things that personally I believe in my political views that are more important than, let's say, somebody else may believe. And I will say that on the political scale, I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to be too controversial, but I will admit that I lean towards the conservative side. I'm probably like maybe 60-40, 65, two-thirds conservative. I don't know how you want to put it, but I definitely lean to the right. Just to throw that out there. So that may sway some of my decisions based off of the research that I'm doing, but I'm going to try and be unbiased as I possibly can. Now, I also want to point out that I'm not going to be ranking every single president. I'm going to do my best to name as many as I can, but I'm probably going to get through only like 20, maybe 25, because there are some that just bore me. They didn't really do anything. Like, for example, I'm not going to be tier ranking guys like William Henry Harrison or not Zachary Taylor, or James Garfield, because their presidency was only 40 and 200 days respectively. So it's hard to say what type of president they would have been, and you can't really rank them. I'm also not going to be ranking these two gentlemen right here because I just don't think it's appropriate in this time in our country right now, considering they were our last two. It's just way too controversial, but I think we can go before that. So what a lot of people like to do is they actually like to sort of go through like via tier. Like they'll start with supreme or superior, and then they'll go to the F category. They'll go from A to F. What I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be going through every single one in chronological order. Oh, I just want to point out once again, I'm not a historian. I just want to do this for fun. I'm trying to put a video out there for you guys. My roommate's not here, by the way, but if he walks in, you know what? I don't care. I'm just doing a video. It's okay. So you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull my phone out, and I'm going to tier ranking presidents. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information on why I believe that these certain presidents should be ranked in said category. Alright, so let's start with Washington. Now, Washington, I'm going to put in the supreme or superior category. Is it supreme or I think it's superior actually. Although I think supreme sounds cool. Anyway, he's going to be in the S category because he was, of course, the father of our country. He led us through the Revolutionary War. One of the founding fathers who signed the Declaration of Independence. So I personally believe that is worthy of the S tier. We definitely wouldn't have had an America today, or an America quite like the one that we have without Washington. He sort of drove us or took us out of British tyranny. So you know what I hate? I gotta go through all of them and try and find where he actually is. And there are some of these guys I don't even recognize. It's like I'm afraid I'm gonna I recognize most of the presidents, but there's some of them like way back in the old days that's like I don't know. Is that Grant? Is that Fillmore? I don't know who. You know, I can't recognize some of them. The next guy I'm going to be doing is Thomas Jefferson. Now, he was also one of the founding fathers. He gained a lot of land. He was also sort of took over after Adams, with this because he was a Federalist, and then he took over, and he was also really good with the economy and whatnot. And like I said, also, did I mention this? Also one of the founding fathers of our country, and I think that is also deserving to be in the A category. So let's see. Okay, next guy, James Monroe. Again, like Jefferson, he was a founding father, and he also helped us gain land. Of course, he had that whole Monroe Doctrine, which was instrumental in sort of like helping the U.S. like individualize us almost. Okay, so the next guy we have on our list is Franklin Pierce. Now, he's going to fall into the F category, just a horrible president, horrible person, because he enforced the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which I'm not sure if that was him or Fillmore that came. I think it was Fillmore that ordered that slaves had to rejoin their masters, and then he was sort of the one who Pierce is the one who like pushed it more and more. He also helped drive the United States into the Civil War, so he's gonna fall in the F category for that. Probably the worst time in the history of the United States where the country was actually apart. And this brings us to our next president, which is James Buchanan. Now, Buchanan was, some historians say, the worst president. I'm not sure exactly if he was the worst president or not, but he's... Okay, so this brings us to our next president, James Buchanan. Now, he was most likely the worst president, because a lot of historians say that he was the worst. There's a little bit of debate over it, but if you ask most historians, they'll probably say that James Buchanan was the worst president. And the reason this is because he did nothing to try and stop the South from succeeding from the North, and he was pro-slavery. So he pretty much drove us into the Civil War era. We follow up with our next guy, Abraham Lincoln, who was the complete opposite, quite possibly our best president. Spoiler alert, he's up there with Washington in my opinion. I'd say him and Washington, Lincoln and Washington, are the only two who fall into the S tier or are deserving of that. And that's because he helped bring the country back together. He sort of helped, or sort of, I guess, I don't know how you want to say, revamp or sort of revivify the Declaration of Independence, where everybody could be free, not just white Americans, and freed. They came up with the Emancipation Proclamation. Of course, you had the famous Gettysburg Address, and this was all instrumental in ending the war and getting rid of slavery in this country. Next guy. See, we're kind of going back to back to back now. Andrew Johnson. Now, Andrew Johnson was so terrible, he was actually impeached. He tried to undo all of the work that Lincoln had done, and it just, everybody just completely hated on it, and just an awful president. Also, he wasn't great with some other things too. I'm not sure exactly what. I would have to do more research, but I think I got all the information I need when I say that he tried to undo all the work that Lincoln did, and he got impeached. I think that's all the information I need, and I think I'm right by assuming that he was one of the worst presidents and deserves to be in the F category. Alright, so next guy that we got, I think is worth mentioning, is William McKinley. Now, McKinley, he was the president at the end of the 1800s from 87 to 91. He actually won his second term, but he was unfortunately assassinated about 6 months later. He helped us get Guam, Philippines, and I want to say, was it Puerto Rico? No, it wasn't Puerto Rico. He helped us get, okay, point I'm making, I can't think of the third one, but he helped us get more land, expand our power politically, and help us sort of become more of a dominant force worldwide, more of a threat. And he helped grow the America's economy to one of the best it had ever been. And I think that's deserving of. I think that's a solid B. You know, there are some other things that he did that, you know, maybe weren't quite as good, but you know, I'll leave that out just because I wanna get through this quickly. I want to mention everything, and I'll give him a B. So where's McKinley? So I gotta look every single time. It's kind of frustrating. The next guy that we got is Ted Roosevelt. or Theodore Roosevelt. Now, he was the first president to actually win a Nobel Peace Prize, which was very impressive. He ended the coal strike of 1902, and he also came up with a square deal, which I'm not totally for, I'll admit, because I think the control of the big corporations, and or what some people may call as trust busting back then, I'm not really sure if that's exactly the same thing, but I think it sort of has to do with the same thing. Again, I'm not a historian, I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm just making an estimate that it's not necessarily a good thing. I don't think we should be controlling corporations. That's not really something I'm for. Anyway, back to my point is that he also did do good things for the economy, even though he did some things that I believe that were not so good. He also helped out the environment a lot, and he built the Panama Canal. There was a lot of other, I think it was Yellowstone National Park he helped build, and it did cost money, which again, that's going to rise the price, but it also helped our environment a lot, and these are still things that are helping us today. Alright, next guy that we got here is the dreadful Woodrow Wilson. Now, in my opinion, he was quite possibly one of the worst presidents as well, because he was pretty much a socialist, he was a vicious racist, and apparently, or supposedly, some people say he even created the Sedition Act so he could just go after people who were on the opposite side of the political party and pretty much just attack people because he thought they were scandalous or whatnot. And he did other things that sort of didn't help the United States in the war. He tried to make the federal government as big as it possibly could be, just really helped us regress, and was just an awful president throughout the 1910s. And that brings us to our next president, who I guess you could say was slightly better than Wilson, but not much of a better person either. Warren Harding. Now, Harding actually wasn't that bad in his first few years as president. He did end up passing away, I believe, of a heart attack in 23. But there was this whole thing that actually sort of came up while Coolidge was president, his predecessor, years after he had died, and that was the Teapot Dome scandal, which really hurt his reputation a lot. And apparently he was sort of wooed women with letters and whatnot. Apparently, I guess he cheated on his wife too. I won't really get into that. I really won't hold that against him that much, but I don't think his policies were that bad. I mean, based off of what I read, but again, he wasn't a great person. Some of the things he did in office weren't that great. And apparently, he hired a lot of his friends to be cabinet members, and it's like, you don't put your friends to help you in your business. You don't mix family with business. That's what they say, and that's sort of what he did, or his friends. Yeah, next guy we got here is Calvin Coolidge, probably the most underrated president in the history of the United States. Now, he actually sort of dropped the America's national debt like a full quarter, I believe, or 25%, and that really helped America sort of grow as an economy. And there was also plenty of other policies that helped America's booming economy in the 1920s, which was also sort of one of the underlying factors that helped with sort of the happiness that you saw in that time period almost 100 years ago. And there is some debate on how some of its policies actually hurt in the long run, because right after Hoover took over, the economy completely collapsed. So there is some debate that he might have caused it. He takes some of the blame for that. But there's a lot of other things that factor in, and I don't think we'll ever know for sure whether or not he is to blame for that, or if we can blame one specific thing for that. I think there's a handful of things that, people will be debating it for years and years and years, and I don't know if we'll ever have a specific answer for it. And that brings us to our next guy. That would be Herbert Hoover. Now, Hoover's not a terrible president. However, some of the things he did when he was president during the Great Depression, which again, he was put in a pretty tough spot, because only a few months after he became president, he was just handed this giant, complete mess as a president, and that is the Great Depression. And I think he raised tariffs, which actually he believed was going to help, and that actually hurt America. So he actually drove us deeper into the depths of the Great Depression. And that brings us to our next A president, and that is Franklin Roosevelt. Now, he drove us out of the Great Depression with his New Deal strategy. He was the only president who served 4 terms, or not a full 4 terms, but won 4 elections, and helped us heroically throughout World War II. And he was even more heroic considering that he was actually suffering from polio and confined to a wheelchair when he gave his speech declaring war on Japan on December 8th. And some people say did he stand? I think he actually stood. I'll have to look back the speech. I could be making that up, but I think he was actually standing, even though he was very, very sick. And that was sort of him saying, like, you know what, we're gonna stand up and fight against Japan. So, amazing president. Next guy I want to talk about is Dwight Eisenhower. Now, he's an A president. He was in favor of the Brown versus the Board of Education, or supported that trial of 1954. He extended or sort of put money into growing America's transportation, like with the Highway Acts and whatnot, and was really great in growing our economy throughout the 50s and the early 60s. And that leads us to our next president, which is John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was a anti-communist and was actually a really conservative figure considering he was from the Democratic Party. He cut taxes. He had a lot of other conservative policies that helped out our economy as well. He was in favor of driving us towards the concept of space more, and when I say that, he, I think, was sort of one of the driving factors in helping us get to the moon, even though, of course, he wasn't alive by the time we made it to the moon in July of '69. I'd say he was sort of slightly overrated considering that he was responsible for the Bay of Pigs debacle in '61, and of course in '62 that led us to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he heroically led us out of that. We were this close to getting our asses blown, and this whole nuclear war just, the deal was that Russia would take their missiles away from Cuba, which was only 90 miles away from Florida, and then we would take our missiles out of Turkey. It was a good deal. Blockade, very dangerous move, but worked out for the best. Anyway, that brings us to our next guy, and that is Richard Nixon. Now, a lot of people will say that Nixon's not a very good person, and I won't argue with that. But the problem is he was also a good president, and I get it. There was a whole Watergate scandal, but some of his policies weren't that bad. Now, Nixon created the EPA, which really helped out our environment and sort of lowered the tensions in the Vietnam War, when it was going on and whatnot. Some of his foreign policy really helped us sort of drive home the fact that we were fighting a war that we couldn't necessarily win. So Nixon, I'd say he's a B president. He's not that great because then again, there was a whole other debacle with him in China, but so because of Watergate though, he was sort of, I guess, kind of, I'll put him as a B, just to be fair, just to be nice. I'm not trying to, just because he's a Republican, I'm not gonna, act super nice towards him and call him an A. He's a B. I have no C's yet. Don't worry, I'll get to the C's though. Now our next president is Jimmy Carter, and he is an F. He created this massive inflation, or stagflation rather, which is really horrible. I think it was up to like 13.5%. And he also was sort of the driving factor when it came to creating tensions in the Middle East when there was that whole, it was called the Iranian, excuse me, hold on. Okay, it was the Iranian hostage crisis, I want to say the Iranian terrorist crisis. It was on the tip of my tongue, I had to look it up. He sort of was the driving factor that got those hostages and whatnot. And unfortunately, he did try to help with that, but unfortunately it didn't really work out that well. And he of course, he is going to end up falling as an F president, and he was so bad that he got himself destroyed by Reagan in the 1980 election, and he got only 49 electoral votes just 4 years prior after getting 297. Only won 6 states. Can you believe that? If you look at the map, it's completely red. Almost completely. So Carter is going to fall in the F category. He was a better person than Nixon. I will say that. He's probably a nice person. He's actually still alive. I think he is about to or just turned 98. He could actually run a second time. He can legally run a second time. Can you believe that? Now, Ronald Reagan, I'm going to put as an A. He followed up Jimmy Carter's presidency. He created Reaganomics, which were very helpful in getting the economy to boom, and he also ended the Cold War and was pretty much the guy that told Gorbachev to just tear down the wall, and they did. I'd say that's an A president to me. Anti-communist, just amazing stuff. Alright, next guy that we got, George Bush. He is our first C president that we have. Oh no, Kennedy's not a C. Do I have him in the C category? My bad. Yeah, before next episode. Now, George Bush was actually a pretty good president at first because he helped us claim victory in Desert Storm. But the problem is that he promised that there were no new taxes, and then he came out with new taxes, and it was really tough in the early 90s because the economy was really struggling and jobs were hard to come by. I remember my dad telling me, I think he was only a few years having graduated from college, and he really had a hard time finding a job, and it was just really tough back then. And that's why he's a C president, because if you make a promise that you can't keep, that's pretty bad. I know other politicians have done that. I'm coming to get all the facts and just sort of, as you guys can probably tell, I'm talking about the economy a lot. I'm talking about the wars a lot. That's sort of what I'm more focused on. I'm focused on the economy and our safety. Those are like my two big concerns. Alright, and I think that is going to bring us to the last president that I want to talk about, and that is George Bush. There he is, George Bush. Now he's another C president. I love how I have just both the Bushes in the C category. I feel like there's other guys that I could be putting there. But nah, I just figured I want to make this video as quick and as short as possible, even though I've probably dragged this out way too far because I suck at time management. Anyway, George Bush, again, first 4 years of his presidency, I think were pretty damn good considering he was heroic in leading us through the events of 9/11. The problem is, though, some of his foreign policy wasn't great. Of course, he declared war in Iraq, which, like a lot of Americans, I don't really see why that was necessary. Great guy, though. Pretty funny guy. He gave a lot of great quotes, or Bush-isms, as some people like to call it. So I'd say he's a C president. He wasn't as terrible as some people say he was, but he wasn't that great either. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, I'm not a historian. As you could probably tell, I don't know a lot of what I'm talking about. I'm just doing this for fun. Thank you for watching. God bless. Have a good evening, and I'll see you later.